zombie, and Clayton was the sweater zombie. That he was known as the sweater zombie. He became a casting director. He and Sharon became casting directors, and they cast me in a CBS Movie of the Week, which is what got me into the Screen Actors Guild. So before I went to Hollywood after graduating from Point Park, I had a couple of films under my belt, my Screen Actors Guild card, and really, so by doing Dawn of the Dead, it really is what launched my career all the way around.
And you just said so much that I can work off of, because you mentioned John Amplis, who I had on the show, 3 years ago. Great guy. So many great memories from that interview. And, that's really, you made a great point about wearing different hats, because I kind of feel like the few people that I have working with me here at Cloverleaf, we all kind of wear different hats as well.
Sure.
I guess until you make the billions or the millions or, even the thousands, you can't hire anybody.
Right. And I went on to do Knightriders with George.
Right.
And also went to do Creepshow. In Creepshow, Tom Savini and I played the trash men in Creepshow. We played the garbage men. But I was also brought in to do the lighting effects. So when you watch Creepshow, and that's because of my theater background and my lighting background in theater, when you watch Creepshow and the lights change behind the actors, that's me doing that by hand. Those were the days, that was 1981, so decades before digital effects could be used for that. And so we did all those light changes by hand. So I was a grip and an actor in the movie. And if you look at the credits, you'll see Marty Schiff, Trash Man #1, and then you'll see, or Garbage Man #1, and then you'll see Moon Baby Schiff under the grip credits, and that's me too. They use my nickname Moon Baby as opposed to my actor name Marty, and so, but they're both me. But that's the way it kind of worked out. So I wore, a couple, and I also drove the grip truck, so I wore several hats on Creepshow.
That is very cool, and of course, Tom Savini I've heard a lot about just from people I've interviewed, but the last big con interview I did was with Art Lehman, and we talked a lot about Tom Savini, and he's wore a lot of different hats, from all the great makeup work to the acting and so on and so forth. It's really interesting where you can start and where you end up at. Yeah,
it's true. It's very true. And I still like doing it all, actually. I like to produce these days. I've been producing more in the last 20 years than doing anything. But occasionally a role will pop up that I want to do, and I'll act, I'll direct. So I still enjoy having my hands in many different areas of the production. So.
And, of course, you're still a visiting assistant professor at Point Park, and being that I saw the film Technique and Technology, I took a lot of those radio TV courses in college. So it kind of just reminded me that this is pretty neat. I mean, you've gone full force with all this.
Yeah, I've always enjoyed teaching, and actually this year I'll be teaching at the University of Cincinnati in Cincinnati, and teaching the same sort of courses, directing, production, etc. I always enjoyed teaching, and I owned my own school in L.A. for a long time. I owned the L.A. Film Actors Lab, which was a school that taught acting for the camera, and it was always a passion of mine. When I came back from L.A., I did some teaching. I had an acting school here in Pittsburgh. I lost my house in the Northridge earthquake, which is why we ended up moving back home to Pittsburgh and staying. But it's supposed to be a temporary move 25 years ago, And so I started to apply to teach in colleges around the country, and found out that because I didn't have a master's, I was not able to be hired. And it was an eye-opening experience, because here I was with 30-some years experience, great portfolio of work, and it didn't matter. I just didn't have the master's. An opportunity started at Point Park where they had a visiting artist position open, and for that you didn't need to have a master's. And so life experience was exactly what they wanted for the visiting artist. So I was able to get that position for 4 years, actually, while I was doing that, I took advantage of the tuition remission that you get, and I went back to school and got my master's. So at the age of 60, I went back to school and got my MFA, and so now I'm a full-blown. I have a master's degree now in creative writing in film and television. So you're never too old to chase that dream, And it was really exciting for me. It made me a better teacher, and it really teaching always has kept me sort of in touch with what's happening out there. And most importantly, I get to pay forward my experiences and a passion for a career I've had all my life. I started acting when I was 14 years old. So we're looking at an almost 50-year career. And to be able to share that with the next generation of filmmakers is really exciting for me.
Yeah, that's true. I think, I don't even think I can remember the first time I had like a little cassette recorder with a little bendy microphone coming off the edge of it, just walking around making goofy noises and stuff. I had a feeling that I was going to have to do something with my talents because I live in a town of 500 people, and there's no real there's no reason for a Bullwinkle in the town of 500 people.
Yeah, right, exactly. Well,
but,
then you have to appreciate Dave Coulier then.
Yeah, that was where I was going.
Yeah. And the many voices Dave can do. And doing Out of Control with Dave on Nickelodeon, which was the very first, Nickelodeon had been buying programming off the shelf from other networks up until our show, which was Out of Control. And there's about 14 of them on YouTube now. And if you get a chance to Google Out of Control, and it's very dated, and it was shot on 3/4, and even before Betamax and before Beta, but it was a lot of fun, and working with Dave, who could do thousands of voices, it seems, was just really a lot of fun. So if you ran around with a recorder making noises and doing voices, you definitely have to appreciate the work of Dave Coulier.
Yeah, I mean, and I was going to ask about Out of Control, so I'm glad you brought him up. But I think I'm almost certain that it was one of the first impressions I learned from watching Full House.
Right. And before Full House, there was Out of Control. So a lot of the things that Dave did on Full House, like Cut It Out, that started on Out of Control. And,
wow.
Whenever... if Dave's, in the area, I'll go see his show, and the audience all do Cut It Out at him, and they think it's from Full House, but really it started on Out of Control on Nickelodeon. So, and my character Hearn could never get it right. He'd be, cut it out, cut it off, cut it back, whatever. So we had a lot of fun with that, and so all of that stuff, a lot of that stuff started the things that Dave took over to Full House with him started on Out of Control on Nickelodeon.
And doing, all this reading up I've done about you getting forward to this interview, geez, lost my train of thought. I'll go back to that. We'll bring it back. I'll pull this up. I'll start something else. Yeah, I know where I was going now. Please pause for this brain lapse. I had so much pulled up about you. Yeah, but I was on such a roll. Marty, I was on a roll.
We can talk about anything else.
Well, I was going from Out of Control and oh gosh, I'll come back to that. That's killing me right now. I hate when there we go. In Living Color. You had a lot to do with getting that developed and launching careers of Jim Carrey, the Wayans brothers, and so much more, leading into Ace Ventura, Blank Man. How did that come about? Because that was, back in the day, I'd say pretty groundbreaking for a sketch comedy show.
Well, I worked with, it was actually Eric Gold who made the magic happen. Eric Gold and I grew up in Pittsburgh together, and he had a company called the Gold Company at the time. And they discovered he had a partner named Jimmy Miller, who was also a Point Park student. And I introduced Eric and Jimmy, and they managed this kid, this comedian who Jimmy had seen at the Hermosa Beach Comedy and Magic Club, I think, and a few other places. And that turned out to be Jim Carrey. Eric was managing Damon and Keenan Wayans at the time. And Damon and Jim Carrey had done a movie called, I think it was Earth Girls Are Easy, if I'm not mistaken. And so when Damon and Keenan put together In Living Color, they insisted on having Jim Carrey on the show. So Eric was expanding. He needed a director of development. And so basically I was involved in looking at, reading scripts, doing coverage on the scripts, being involved in the day-to-day. It was a huge team effort to get that thing going, and Eric Gold was really the driving force behind that, and I worked basically for the Gold Company. So that's how it all came down.
That is really awesome, because Jim Carrey is just one of the funniest, naturally talented comedians, actors that I could think anybody could put on their list.
Yeah, and genuinely a nice guy, a really nice guy. So, it was interesting to be in Hollywood during that era. I got to L.A. in the late 70s, and of course that's when comedians started to come into their own. And, guys like Robin Williams and Billy Crystal, they were sort of breaking the ground for comedians on television that would lead to Jim Carrey and the Wayans brothers and, Jerry Seinfeld and those guys having the careers they had, because prior to that, comedians were really never taken seriously for television shows prior to that whole generation. So to be out there for that whole thing, and doing mostly sitcoms on TV, which is what I did, and Out of Control was, of course, a comedy. And after 12 years, I was the comic relief on Dallas. I was on Dallas for 2 seasons as a split. I was in a mental institution as my character had a split personality disorder. I played chess with myself. I was sort of the comic relief on Dallas after all those years. So it was a great time to be in Hollywood during that period, and sort of having a comic edge was it was really, the timing of it was great.
Well, the dogs are barking. I'm running out of time, so that means I got to get the final question. What does the future hold for you? I'm sure you make it out to cons. I'm sure, of course, you're still acting and directing and doing all this fun stuff. Where can people catch you?
Well, they can catch me at the University of Cincinnati this semester. But, I'm working on getting a couple of films produced, working with Mike Gassaway, who was the director of Jimmy Neutron on Nickelodeon.
Oh, yeah.
And Mike and I are working on a horror film project, and with co-writer Adam Ryan and a couple of other people. And so we're doing that. I've got a couple of things that I wrote actually while I was doing my master's. My thesis program, my thesis script, I'm going to try to get produced out there, going to try to get that pitched, and a couple of other projects. I never stop, and I have no intentions of retiring ever. And, of course, people can find me online on Facebook and LinkedIn and places like that.
Well, I will definitely put your name out for Dark History Con next year. I know he's already booked up this year, but we get a lot of horror and true crime and actors and authors and fun stuff. So I think you would be a great fit. I will, it's all right, I'll pass your name on to him, and hopefully we can see each other in the future, sir.
That would be fun. I'd appreciate that. Thanks for having me on tonight.
No problem, Marty. Have a great night. Thanks again.
You too. Bye-bye now.
All right, bye-bye. All righty, guys. Well, it's time to walk the dog. I had a great show with Marty Schiff. You guys just joined us. Be sure to check the archive in about 10 minutes or so, maybe less. You can download it. Put it on your CD. I always have to say that. Put it on your CD. I'm starting to sound like an old man. Put it on your cassette tape. Put it on your Betamax. Put it on your VCR. Listen on YouTube. Do whatever it is that this generation does, and check out the show, because it was really great. once again, big love up to my brother in heaven, Jeff Upton. We miss you, brother. All right.